labeled defective by aliens, but the human held her like she was precious. Ciala stood in the center of the hall, eyes lowered, while the elders whispered and judged her. She was young, only 19 by human years, but her fate had already been decided. She is not fit, one of them said coldly. Her hips are too narrow. She cannot carry strong offspring. A failed female. Those words burned deep into her heart. Ciala's skin was a soft violet blue and her eyes glowed faintly, silver in the dim light. Her hair was long and soft like silk, but none of that mattered to her people. To them she was a defect, born wrong, shaped wrong, useless for the future of their race. They didn't exile her. They didn't kill her. They did something worse. They made her invisible. From that day forward, she was sent to the lowest part of the colony station, a place of dust, broken machines, and trash. She cleaned floors, cleared waste, and slept beside rusted pipes. No one spoke to her. No one touched her. She became a ghost. One evening, while Ciala scrubbed the metal floor with her bare hands, she heard voices echoing from a vent nearby. The words made her freeze. "Another batch is ready," said a deep voice. "Unwanted females. They'll fetch a decent price in the slave markets." "What about the one with the strange hips?" another asked. "The violet one? She's still alive? Thought she'd starve." Ciala's blood turned cold. They were selling the defective girls, like her. Discarded daughters, now being sold. As property, she couldn't stay. She had to run. But where? That night she packed the only things she had, a broken blanket, a shard of mirror, and a small silver pendant from her mother, long gone. She moved quietly through the station tunnels, heart pounding like a war drum. She knew the guards. She knew their shifts. She almost made it. Almost. Hands grabbed her from behind. 2 armored guards shoved her to the ground. One kicked her side. "Trying to run, worthless girl," the first one growled. "You think anyone out there wants you? You're nothing." They dragged her to the transport bay where others like her were being loaded into cargo pods. Silent girls with eyes full of fear. None of them resisted. They had no hope left. Ciala screamed and kicked, but the guards only laughed. Then, something changed. A loud crash echoed through the bay. A storage crate slammed into the wall, sending sparks into the air. The guards turned. From the smoke walked a tall figure, broad-shouldered, wrapped in dark clothes, with a weapon slung across his back. His face was part covered by a hood, but his voice rang out clear and sharp. "Let her go." The guards blinked. "This is none of your business, human," one snarled. The man stepped forward slowly. I said, "Let her go." They didn't listen. One moved forward with a shock baton, swinging it toward the man's side. It never landed. With speed no one expected, the human grabbed the guard's arm midair and twisted. A loud crack. The guard screamed and dropped. The second lunged, but the human spun, slammed his elbow into the alien's chest and knocked him out cold. Silence. Ciala stared, wide-eyed. No one had ever fought for her, not once in her entire life. The human looked at her, not like she was strange or weak, but like she was real. He held out his hand. She backed away, afraid it was a trick. He didn't move closer. He just crouched down slowly and said in a softer voice, "I'm not here to hurt you. You don't belong in a cage." Shook her head. Why would you help me?" He looked into her eyes and said something that stayed with her forever. Because no one should be treated like garbage, especially not someone who still has fight left in their eyes. Ciala stared at his hand. Her fingers trembled. And then, she took it. They ran together into the dark tunnels, alarms starting to scream behind them. But for the first time in her life, Ciala felt something strange. It wasn't fear. It wasn't shame. It was the small, flickering spark of hope. Ciala had never been this close to a human before. She had only heard stories. Loud, dangerous creatures with short tempers and strange habits. But the man holding her hand was silent and calm. His hand was rough and strong, but not cruel. He didn't grip her tightly. He simply didn't let go. They moved quickly through the narrow tunnels of the old supply shafts, the air thick with dust and oil. Alarms still echoed behind them, but Jackson, he had finally told her his name, moved with quiet confidence. "Where are we going?" she asked in a small voice. "Someplace they won't follow," he said. "I used to fix ships down in the scrap pit. Nobody likes to go there." As they turned a corner, Ciala stumbled. Her body was weak from days of hunger and cold. She fell to her knees. Jackson stopped immediately. "Hey, easy," he said, kneeling beside her. "You're not a machine. You need rest." She looked at him in surprise. "You talk to me like I matter." "You do," he said simply. "Even broken things matter." She lowered her eyes, unsure what to say. They reached an old hangar beneath the station. Metal beams creaked above. Broken ship parts lay everywhere, glowing faintly under flickering lights. Jackson found an old storage room and helped her inside. There was a worn blanket, a small heater, and even food. "You stay here," he said. "Rest. I'll get water and patch that cut on your leg." Ciala looked around in shock. This is yours?" He nodded. "Home sweet home. Not much, but no one bothers me here." "But why are you helping me?" she asked again. Jackson paused. His eyes looked distant, like he was remembering something painful. "Because once, a girl like you helped me," he said finally. "I was left to die on a broken freighter. An alien girl fed me, hid me. I never saw her again. And now you help someone else?" He gave a small smile. "Feels right." That night, as Ciala lay on the floor wrapped in the old blanket, she couldn't sleep. Jackson sat nearby, cleaning a damaged plasma cutter. His hands worked quietly, but his eyes kept drifting back to her. She finally asked the question in her heart. "Do I look wrong to you?" Jackson blinked. "What?" "My people said my hips were wrong, that I can't breed properly, that I'm useless." He put the tool down. "You want the truth?" he asked. She nodded. "You look like someone who's been hurt too many times, told too many lies, and still found a way to stand up again. That's what I see." Ciala stared at him. Her chest felt tight. No one had ever said something like that to her. "But what if they find us?" she whispered. "Then they'll learn what it means when a human doesn't let go." The next morning, footsteps echoed near the entrance to the scrapyard. Ciala sat up in alarm. Jackson was already on his feet, weapon in hand. Two figures appeared, through the smoke, station enforcers wearing black masks and red lights on their arms. Jackson grabbed Ciala's hand. "Time to move." They ducked behind cargo crates as the officers scanned the area. "She's here somewhere," one of them said. "The human's protecting her. That's a crime now." Ciala gripped his arm. "We're trapped." "Not yet," he said. "There's a shaft below the broken hauler. Leads to a waste chute." "Waste chute?" He grinned. "Not pretty. But it leads outside the city walls." Together they slipped into the dark hole, sliding down rusted metal until the light disappeared behind them. Inside the chute, the world smelled of oil and heat. Pipes hissed. Sparks fell like glowing snow. Ciala coughed, crawling beside him. When they finally reached the bottom, they tumbled out into cold air. They were outside, beyond the gates of the colony city. A frozen plain stretched before them. Jackson looked up at the stars. "We'll need to move fast. I know a place. An old smuggler camp past the ridge." Ciala looked at the stars, then at the strange, quiet human beside her. "You saved me again," she said. He looked back at her. "I didn't come to this world looking to save anyone." "Then why?" "Maybe," he said slowly. "I saw someone who reminded me what it means to care." She didn't reply. She just walked beside him, through the cold toward whatever waited beyond the horizon. The wind was sharp, cold enough to cut through skin. But Ciala didn't notice it at first. She noticed something else. A sound. Not the usual howling wind or creaking metal of the scrapyard outskirts. No. This was different. Footsteps. Fast. Heavy. Too many. She turned to look at Jackson, who had suddenly stopped walking. His eyes were already locked on the ridge behind them. "They're coming," he said, "and they're not alone." Jackson moved quickly. He pulled Ciala into a narrow trench lined with snow and pipes. The sky above was turning gray-blue, the first light of dawn peeking through the clouds. Ciala shivered violently. She tried to hide it, but Jackson noticed. Without a word, he slipped off his thick brown jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. It smelled like metal, fuel, and something warm. Safe. She stared at him, confused. "You'll freeze. I've been cold before," he said softly. "But I'm not letting you shake apart in front of me." No one had ever done that for her. Not her own kind. Not the elders. Not even her birth parents. They moved again, faster now, through an old maintenance tunnel hidden beneath the snowline. Jackson knew every pipe, every broken vent. This part of the station outskirts hadn't seen visitors in years. Ciala kept close. Her legs ached, but she didn't say a word. Not when someone was finally treating her like she was more than trash. Inside the tunnel, they found a quiet chamber once used by smugglers. Empty crates and old ration packs lay everywhere. Jackson checked the corners, cleared debris, and pulled down an old metal sheet to cover the entrance. Then he turned to her and said, "We rest here, just for a little." Ciala nodded and sat down, curling her legs under the jacket. "I don't understand. You," she whispered. Jackson sat beside her. "What do you mean? You risk your life for me, you fight guards, you run through freezing snow, and now you freeze just so I don't." He looked at her, really looked, then said, "Where I come from, we protect those who've been treated like they don't matter. Because deep down, they always do." She lowered her head. "Even if they're wrong?" "There's nothing wrong with you, Ciala." She didn't respond. But for the first time, she leaned her head gently against his shoulder, and he didn't pull away. Later, as Jackson tried to fix an old transmitter, a quiet beep came from the device. "Uh-oh," he muttered. "What is it?" she asked. "Scan sweep. Someone's tracking power signatures. They're close." Ciala tensed. "They'll find us again." "Not if we make the first move," Jackson said with a smirk. He reached into one of the crates and pulled out a long, dusty coat, smuggler-made, lined with heat-reactive cloth. He handed it to her. "Put that on. It'll block thermal scans." As she slipped it over her shoulders, she realized it fit perfectly. "Why do you keep helping me?" she asked again. Jackson paused before answering. This time he didn't smile. "My brother died in a cage," he said. "Used by people who said he wasn't worth saving. I couldn't help him. But I can help you." The words hit her hard. Jackson had lost someone too. She looked up at him and said quietly, "Then maybe we save each other." They left the chamber and moved into the deeper tunnels, reaching an old cargo lift that hadn't worked in years. Jackson banged it with a metal rod, muttered something about good old Earth tech, and smiled when it hummed to life. As they rode the lift upward, Ciala looked at him with wide, glowing eyes. "I was supposed to be alone," she said. "My life was meant to end in a cage." "Not anymore," Jackson replied. "You're not property, you're not broken." She whispered something in her language, soft and melodic. "What does that mean?" he asked. "It's the word for precious." As the lift doors opened, the blinding light of morning spilled in, revealing a wide, broken landscape, crashed ships, distant towers, and rising smoke trails. A new world, a dangerous one. But for Ciala, it was also the first place she'd ever felt free, and the first place she had someone who held her like she mattered, like she was sacred. The moment the first stun bolt hit the ground near her feet, Ciala didn't freeze. She ran. Not because she was scared, but because Jackson was still in danger. It had been less than an hour since they reached the surface. The plan was simple: cross the old crash field, reach the signal post, and call for off-world help. Easy, If the local enforcers hadn't caught up so fast. Now they were surrounded by half-destroyed ships, smoking ruins and metal debris. And someone, somewhere, was tracking them. Ciala ducked behind a fallen wing panel, her breath sharp in the cold air. Jackson, crouched nearby, checked his pulse blaster. His jaw was tight. Not angry, focused. "They're hunting us like animals," Ciala whispered. "Then we fight like animals with teeth," he replied. Suddenly, a voice boomed from above, a loudspeaker carried by drones. "Alien female designated as defective. Return her now, human. You have violated Interspecies Order Law 22C. This is your last warning." Jackson didn't answer. He simply aimed upward and fired. The drone exploded in a flash of blue light. That was all it took. From the hills above, 6 enforcer drones dropped into view, and 2 heavily armored bounty hunters descended on hoverbikes, moving straight toward them. "Move," Jackson shouted, pushing Ciala forward. They ran through the wreckage, dodging bolts, leaping over broken hulls. But Ciala wasn't the same girl who once cried in a metal cell. Not anymore. As they reached an open path, a hoverbike swooped low, aiming to cut them off. Jackson raised his blaster, but he wasn't fast enough this time. Ciala saw it first. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed a long metal rod from the debris and hurled it like a spear. It slammed into the hoverbike's engine, causing it to spin out and crash. Jackson looked at her in surprise. "You've been holding out on me," he said. She smirked. "You said I had fight left in me." They reached an old tech bunker near the cliff edge, rusted, half collapsed, but it had thick walls. Inside, they caught their breath. Jackson was hit, a burn across his side. He sat against the wall, gripping. His ribs, Ciala ripped part of her coat and pressed it against the wound. "You're bleeding." "I've had worse," he muttered. "I haven't," she said, "and I don't want to lose you." He looked at her, eyes soft despite the pain. "You won't." Outside, more drones arrived. The enemy wasn't giving up. Ciala knew she had to fight, not to survive, but to stay with him. She stood and grabbed the pulse rifle Jackson had dropped. "You can't go back out there," he said, coughing. She looked down at him, fire in her voice. "Then I won't." "But they're not getting in either." Ciala moved to the entrance and took position. Her hands trembled for a moment, then steadied. The first drone came fast. She shot it straight through the sensor core. The second dropped behind her. She ducked and blasted it from below. She wasn't just defending a broken bunker. She was defending the only person who'd ever seen her as more than a body. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. When the last drone exploded in sparks, Ciala stood alone in the smoke, panting, glowing eyes fixed on the battlefield. She walked back inside. Jackson was watching her, stunned. "You saved my life," he said. She knelt beside him. "You saved mine first." He touched her face gently, like she might break. But she didn't. She leaned into it and whispered, "I was born with hips too narrow for carrying life. But now, I carry a reason to live." Ciala found it by accident, a small silver data chip hidden beneath the jacket he always wore. It slipped out while she cleaned his gear. At first, she thought it was just another broken tool, but when she plugged it into the old console in the bunker, the screen lit up with something strange, pictures, not alien ones, human ones. A smiling girl with dark eyes and long hair. A boy next to her, Jackson, younger, with a crooked grin. Ciala leaned closer. There were dozens of images, a small house, a bright sky, a field of trees, children laughing, fireworks in the air, and then the last picture, smoke, fire. That same girl, but now lying on the ground, still, lifeless. Ciala pulled away. Her chest ached and she didn't even know why. Later, when Jackson woke, he saw her holding the chip. He didn't get angry. He didn't even move. He just stared at the screen. "You saw her?" he said quietly. Ciala nodded. "She looked like someone you loved." "She was," he replied. My little sister. Ciala didn't speak. She just listened. She saved my life during the invasion, gave me her oxygen when we were trapped. I lived, she didn't. He looked away. Earth was my home, but I never went back. Why not? Because it doesn't feel like home without her. There was a silence between them, but it wasn't cold. It was full of understanding. Ciala reached over and gently placed her hand over his. You don't talk about Earth, she whispered, because the only part that mattered is gone. He nodded. And for the first time since she met him, Jackson let himself cry. The next day, they received a signal, a coded response from an off-world transport ship. Emergency pickup confirmed. Coordinates locked. Window 20 minutes. Jackson's face tensed. That's the good news, he said. The bad news? They can't land here. We need to reach the North Ridge. Ciala nodded. We'll go. But Jackson shook his head. You'll go. I'll draw the hunters away. No. Ciala, no, she repeated. You gave me a reason to believe again. I won't let you throw yourself away now. He stared at her, this once rejected alien girl who now stood taller than he'd ever seen. They moved fast, through the wreck fields and frozen canyons. The storm clouds rolled in again, thick and low. But Ciala didn't feel cold. Not anymore. Every step she took reminded her that she was alive. Not just breathing, but alive. Near the ridge, they spotted 2 more bounty scouts setting up signal blockers. Jackson raised his weapon, but Ciala touched his hand. I'll handle this. She moved quietly, using the broken metal around them as cover. One scout turned, and Ciala struck, disabling him before he could react. The second tried to fire, but she rolled under the shot and delivered a blow to the helmet. Both went down. Jackson stood stunned. You fight like a trained soldier. No, she said with a soft smile. I fight like someone who doesn't want to lose what she's finally found. As the ship came into view, its bright lights cutting through the clouds, Ciala looked back one last time. This world had never been her home, but it had given her the one thing she never expected. A human who didn't try to change her, who didn't care about her hips, her breeding numbers or her species ranking. He cared about her. When the hatch opened, Jackson motioned for her to go first, but she stopped and did something that surprised even herself. She reached up and pulled him into the softest, warmest embrace of her life. You never had a reason to return to Earth, she whispered. So maybe we find a new home. Together. Jackson said nothing. He just held her tighter, like he'd never let go. The ship that rescued them was too clean, too quiet, too perfect. Ciala should have felt safe when the transport doors closed. Behind them. Jackson even smiled for the first time in days. The crew wore blue uniforms, spoke gently, and offered her warm food and fresh clothes. But something in her stomach twisted, and it had nothing to do with hunger. They were shown to a small cabin, soft beds, working lights, real soap. After sleeping on metal floors and under shredded blankets, this felt like a dream. But dreams don't usually watch you. Ciala noticed it first. The small black circle in the ceiling corner. A camera. Hidden, watching her. She said nothing, just smiled and waited. Later that night, while Jackson slept, Ciala moved silently through the hallway. She followed the sound of muffled voices coming from a locked room 2 doors down. She leaned close, and what she heard nearly made her drop to her knees. The alien girl? She's valuable. Half-blood potential. I know a buyer on Trivax who pays double for rare genes. What about the human? Sell him to the mining colonies or toss him. Doesn't matter. Ciala's fingers tightened on the doorframe. They weren't a rescue crew. They were slavers. She ran back to the cabin, heart racing. Jackson woke instantly, sensing something was wrong. We have to leave, she said. What? Why? They want to sell us. He didn't argue. He didn't ask for proof. He simply grabbed his gear, nodded, and said, Which way? That was when the alarm blared. The lights turned red. Lockdown protocols activated, their cabin door sealed with a sharp clang. Jackson fired a blast at the panel. Nothing. Reinforced. Then they heard footsteps, heavy boots marching toward them. Ciala backed against the wall. "I'll go with them," she whispered. "You can fight your way out." But Jackson grabbed her hand. "No. We leave together. Or not at all." He checked the vents. Too small. The window, fake. But then Ciala spotted something. The water unit. Old design. Still connected to the waste flush tubes. "Do humans fit in there?" she asked. Jackson raised a brow. "Do you think I look flexible?" She grinned. "Compared to me? Definitely not." Together, they pried the unit loose, crawled inside, and slid down into the recycling shaft. It was disgusting, cramped, and loud, but they were moving again. The shaft dumped them into the cargo hold, a dark space filled with crates and blinking containers. They moved fast, searching for an escape pod or shuttle dock, but what they found shocked them both. In one crate, half closed, were other beings, alien girls, young, bruised, terrified, locked in stasis tubes, just like Ciala had almost been. She stepped forward, trembling. "I was one of them," she whispered. Jackson looked at her. "What do you want to do?" Her voice turned to steel. "We free them." It didn't take long. Jackson overrode the locks while Ciala broke the tubes open. One by one, the girls gasped awake. None of them spoke her language, but they understood. Her eyes. They understood freedom. The crew found them too late. By the time the soldiers reached the hold, the prisoners were armed, with stolen tools, scrap weapons, and fury. Jackson fought with precision. Ciala moved like lightning. She wasn't just escaping now. She was leading. When the last slaver dropped, Ciala stood tall in the flashing red light, chest rising with each breath. Behind her, the freed girls looked to her, not just as one of them, but as something more. A symbol, a survivor, a warrior. In the control room, Jackson finally unlocked the flight system. The ship belonged to them now. He looked over his shoulder at her. "Where to, Commander?" She smiled. And for the first time, she said the words no one had ever allowed her to say before. "Someplace we choose." 3 cycles had passed since Ciala took control of the slaver ship. Now they called her captain. Not because she was the strongest, not because she was bred for it, but because she earned it. The old transport ship had been repaired and renamed the Broken Star. It wasn't fancy, but it could fly, fight, and carry those who had nowhere else to go. Ciala and Jackson turned it into a haven, a ship for the discarded, the outcast, and the unwanted. More alien girls had been rescued since that day, some young, some older. Some could barely speak. Some still had chains on their wrists when they arrived. But they all had one thing in common. They were told they were worthless. Now, they flew together. Jackson sat in the engine bay, grease on his hands, music playing from a dusty old earth speaker. Ciala entered, arms crossed. "You're supposed to be in the command chair," he teased. "I was," she replied. "Then I realized our pilot's sleeping and our weapons officer is teaching the kids how to shoot cans off crates." He laughed. "So, everything's normal," she nodded. "Almost." She sat beside him and grew quiet. "You think it's enough?" she asked. He blinked. "What is?" "What we're doing. Taking in the ones like me, trying to fix what the galaxy broke." He looked her straight in the eyes. "Ciala, you're not just fixing it. You're building something new." That night, as the Broken Star drifted through quiet space, they received a new signal, a distress call. Coordinates matched a war-torn mining colony. "Another one," Jackson said, scanning it. Ciala stared at the map. "Plot a course," she ordered. "We're going." He looked at her. "You sure?" She placed her hand on the console. "They're like I was, waiting in darkness, hoping someone comes." The ship dropped out of hyperspace near a shattered moon. The colony below was in chaos, fires, smoke, panic, no defense, no help. Slavers had come back to pick the bones clean, but this time, someone else was coming too. Ciala stood on the bridge, her coat flowing like a flag behind her. The rescued girls, now her crew, stood ready at their stations. Her voice rang out across the ship. They said we were weak, useless, wrong. But we are still here, and now we fight back. The battle didn't last long. The slavers weren't expecting resistance, especially from a ship they once owned. The broken star tore through them like a blade of light. Missiles fired. Drones swarmed. But Ciala's crew flew with purpose. And Ciala herself? She led the charge, from the front. When it was over, the slaver ships were debris, and the miners below looked up to see a ship flying the sigil of a star, cracked but shining, symbol of the unwanted rising. Back on the ship, one of the rescued girls, small, barely 10, hugged Ciala tight. "I was afraid," the girl whispered. "But you came." Ciala knelt down, her voice gentle. "I know. I was afraid once too." The child looked at her wide-eyed. "But you're a captain." Ciala smiled. "I wasn't born one. I became one. When someone refused to let me stay, in that cage." Her eyes drifted to Jackson, who watched from the doorway, arms crossed, proud and quiet. That night, under a blanket of stars, Ciala and Jackson sat alone at the top deck. "So," he said, "you ready to build a fleet?" She looked at him. "Fleet?" He nodded. "There are hundreds of girls still out there, still trapped, still waiting." She thought for a moment, then smiled. "Then we better find a bigger ship." They called her hips wrong for breeding. They said she was broken. They tried to sell her. They tried to silence her. But now they whispered her name in fear and in hope. Captain Ciala, the sacred flame of the forgotten. And beside her, the human who once reached out a hand in the dark and never let go.